Welcome to the World Revolutions class lecture number 9, I think. I want to talk about the Uruguay's Jose Pepe Mujica. He's like the poor man's president. Okay, so Jose Pepe Mujica, Jose Pepe Mujica. It's Mujica. Mujica. Jose Mujica. Okay, so he's like a poor man's president. He's an absolute incredible leader. He's coming out of South America. So just like Evo Morales, he's doing a lot of progressive measures. And actually, it's a really he's legalizing marijuana, but it's a conservative measure because there's so much marijuana that's being dealt, especially from neighboring countries. I think Paraguay, I heard, but like other countries are bringing in, a lot of. You can't stop the supply, you can't stop the trade. So what the government wants to do is actually undercut the black market and sell it for real cheap, regulated. Make sure people only get so much dosage or whatever. So there's limits to how much they can get. They can only raise 6 plants, which I think is similar to Washington or Colorado. So you're only allowed to raise 6 plants in Uruguay, and you're only allowed to, Uruguay. I don't know, Uruguay, Colorado, and Washington. You're only allowed to raise 6 plants. I think in Colorado, Washington also. So it's a conservative approach. It's not a liberal approach. It's not saying okay, everybody start smoking weed. It's saying, my God, we have all this marijuana around, and we have all this black market, this trade that's going underneath, below the scenes, under the scenes in a black market. So it's like, it's dangerous. It makes it more dangerous. And actually, if somebody steals your marijuana, what do you do? What are you going to call the police? You ain't going to call the police. So it basically opens the door to really any and every crime that is known to mankind. So in order to not go to jail, right, because of the risk/reward, it increases the profit incentive. So anytime there's a big bust, that means if you still have supply, then that means you're a wealthy man. And so people that are poor, desperate enough, are willing to take the chance in order to sell a little bit, to make a little bit of money, and to take the risk, because there's a high reward. So, of course, legalization is clearly, prohibition didn't work. Just read your history books. It still doesn't work. So you have New York, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, maybe Oregon and Alaska, who are working on full-blown legalization. Kentucky legalized hemp 2 years ago. Last year we legalized, or this year, I don't know. Last year we legalized hemp. This year we legalized medical marijuana. CBD is only, so we might go for medical and then full-blown, or just go straight for the full-blown. Probably should go for medical, and then once they flunk it and say 65 cannabinoids is no good because one, right, you're going to ruin the entire barrel is ruined just because of one gets you high, just because THC gets you high. And all the other cannabinoids, have to have a bad association, or, that's not fair. That's not fair. One bad apple doesn't spoil the whole barrel. CBDs have been known to cure breast cancer, and so when you isolate them, you can actually start to find out which of the cannabinoids has which effect on which genes, and begin to directly, say, I'm going to kill this cancer with this medicine and this shot in this amount of time. So, let's carry on. Texas, they were talking about why they wouldn't get any, Texas wouldn't be able to legalize marijuana. Kentucky, we're going to have a revolution in next year. In Kentucky, it's going to be a change in leadership. So Steve Beshear has done his 2 years, which is the maximum. There's term limits when it comes to the governor's race. So he'll be stepping down. He is a, what do they call that? The lame duck. So he's only there for another year. He can't really do much of anything at this point, except for be a good spiritual leader for the citizens of Kentucky. I think he can do executive orders. Actually, I think he's been doing some executive orders, which is kind of amazing. But okay, so the no citizen initiatives. Texas, you can't do citizen initiatives. The same is true in Kentucky, and so we also can't do constitutional conventions without it being real hard. But I think if you started one and then got a lot of people involved, then actually it would work. But the Constitutional Convention, you have to get it voted on 1 year, get it voted on next year, and then once the majority of the people has called for a Constitutional Convention 2 times in a row, then you can actually have the convention. But it'll take at least 2 election cycles. And so we don't have any citizen initiatives. If everybody in the state of Kentucky signed down for a Constitutional Convention, we could get something like that. But in terms of an actual issue, such as legalizing marijuana or making alcohol illegal, if we want to change any law, it doesn't matter how many people in the state of Kentucky sign a petition, we wouldn't get it. We wouldn't get it put on the ballot. The only way you could get anything put on the ballot is through the legislature. The legislator has to write out a referendum. And then, actually, they're only allowed to do a referendum in the carefully selected, chosen referendums that's listed in the back of the election book. But you could do it on any law, because that's how law is. You could change any law. You can write any law that you want to. So therefore, you can have any law on the ballot. They've done. I think they was going to do casinos. They've done the gay marriage one. I don't think that was ever put on. That was ever an option, but they was able to do that in 2004. And so they're able to tack on these, referendums, these citizen elected on referendums. So the only way marijuana could get legalized in Kentucky is if you can get 100 House representatives and 38 senators to get on board with putting this on the ballot. So you'd have to get the majority of the House of Representatives and the majority of the senators to vote in favor of putting a referendum on the ballot. And that should actually be no problem, because let the people decide. Who are they to decide our fates? We put it on the ballot and let us choose, and then if we want it, then we keep it. If we don't want it, then we've allowed the people of Kentucky to decide what they wanted to do. So to put them on the on blast in order to put them the medical or full-blown legalization on the ballot, it's not that hard a thing to do, because you're giving the choice to the people. So they're not making the choice for us. We'd be making it ourselves. So you'd have to get them on board. You'd have to get the majority of each of the House on board to sign down on the referendum, and then it goes to the state, and then we vote on it. And then basically the governor will have to concede. If he doesn't repeal it or veto it, then it's law. And so that's in general. Okay, so the same problem with Kentucky that Texas is having is that there's too many conservatives. So there's too many people that have stuck to the old ways. But we got Rand Paul. Rand Paul isn't just for legalization of all drugs. He forced an ex-girlfriend, down in the river or something with his frat. He took some woman that he was in love with and told her to bow down to her aqua Buddha, because he was all brainwashed in a weird youthful craze. Maybe that was some weird hazing that he had been forced to be a part of, or maybe he was just coming up with some things on his own. He's also against the Civil Rights Act, and he's very anarchistic against the Department of Education. And he's basically Ron Paul, but he's pretending to be a conservative so he can get elected. And he's holding his nose through the whole Mitch McConnell debacle, because Matt Bevin was he would have been a better senator to work with than Mitch McConnell. The Rand Paul made a bad calculation, because he's not going for principles. He's going for getting elected. He bullshitted Kentucky, got elected. So now you got Allison Lundergan Grimes trying to bullshit Kentucky too, running a blank slate candidacy. She's not Mitch. She's nice. She has that stance on this issue and that stance on that issue. She can make speeches. So just vote for her. Don't worry about what she actually believes in. No, I don't know. I guess I am pretty much stuck with just voting for her. Or Ed Marksberry. She hasn't won me over, and I'm afraid that if she doesn't show a pulse, she's showing how much she loves King coal. But we need to nationalize our coal. That's one of the big four, right? Legalize marijuana, nationalize coal, land reform, and a guaranteed income. Those are the 4 focuses for all these world's revolutions. So I'm pointing this out because Kentucky is number 1 for marijuana. That's our number 1 cash crop. There's a big prison industrial complex that's built around this. It actually saves $60 million. Colorado saves $60 million, or Washington, in terms of not having to waste law enforcement for doing something that clearly isn't a crime. A victimless crime is not a crime. Law is there to prevent somebody from protecting one person from hurting another person, and if another person is not injured, there is no crime. We have a right as Americans to do what we want to ourselves, to our own body, to with others, as long as we get consent. So crime is going down in Colorado. Colorado benefited from the intricate network of medical dispensaries. So because medical marijuana was legalized in Colorado, they had benefited from that because it was already, Washington is having some problems because they haven't started issuing licenses out, so they haven't started rolling it. They need to have a plan in place. Gatewood had a plan with legalizing marijuana. He had a nice bullet-pointed plan of how things should be worked out. Gatewood had a plan, and also it's really common sense, I think, too. Tobacco, they had a base, so every person that owned land could also raise so much tobacco, and you could buy and sell the bases from other people, or you could rent from the land, or you can raise more that way. Essentially everybody was given the same amount of base, and then if people wanted to pull the base and get together and raise a whole bunch of, they would have to do that on their own. And so that's the same way that can be done with marijuana. The 6 plants, I don't like Uruguay's legalization, because Uruguay is regulating it to a high extent. I forget the exact amount. It's dirt cheap, okay? I like the prices, but they're whereas you can go to Colorado and Washington and you can buy unlimited amounts of marijuana, buy an ounce every day. I think you're only limited to an ounce a day, but you can buy up to an ounce every day, every week, every year, and without, any retribution. So you can buy basically unlimited amounts of weed at an ounce at a time. And an ounce is, that's a month's worth of weed, I believe, for the Uruguayans. And so in terms of, they can buy only enough marijuana, an ounce, what Colorado could buy for a day, Uruguayans can only buy in a month. And so Uruguayan is like really being, they're regulating the hell out of this. And he's a really smart guy. He's also an atheist. He's known as the poor man's president. He took some of the Guantanamo Bay detainees, with that whole prison swap thing, the Syrian refugees. He's accepting refugees to come into his country. He gives 90% of his presidential pay to charity, just so he's making the same amount as the average Uruguayan. He doesn't live in the presidential palace. He lives on a farm, on his sister's farm, on a house on his sister's farm. So this he's also the second country to legalize gay marriage, and he's an atheist. So really, he's taking a scientific perspective about this. The trade isn't being regulated. The war on drugs isn't working for the last 70 years. Prohibition doesn't work. It creates Al Capones. It helps only the law enforcers and the drug lords get bigger and fatter, and justifies their almost illegitimate, insignificant existence. So you need to put the drug lords out of business. He's trying to undercut their prices, and so he's selling it for $1 per gram. And $1 per gram, that's about $7 per 7 grams, and that's a quarter bag, and then that's about $28 per ounce. And so that's dirt cheap, $28 per ounce. There's for the really good stuff, it's like you can charge like almost unlimited amounts, like the tiniest bit for like $60. But quarter bags are usually like what, $20, and then an ounce is usually 4 times a quarter bag, so it would be 100. So it'd be 25, it'd be 100, and then it would be for $1 in Uruguay, the comparable rate would be $8.28. So actually, for what you can get for an ounce, $28 for an ounce in Uruguay is only what you would get a quarter bag. So you would get an ounce for $28. You get an ounce for $28. $7 quarter bags, and $1 a gram. So $1 per gram is dirt cheap, but it's high quality, high grade, and he's not actually taxing. I just come across an article that says that the Uruguayan president isn't taxing it. So he's an incredibly progressive, smart, scientific man, but he is being sincere when he's saying that he doesn't want people addicted. He thinks it's a horrible crime. He doesn't want anybody smoking weed. This is to stop this weed sales. This is to curb the sales of the drug lords and everybody else that's making so much money. Crime is going down in Colorado. That's coming out, and that's a huge deal too, because there's less law enforcement looking at it, but there's less sort of a criminal element to the black market, to the illegal weed. So crime is going down overall in Colorado. I got several articles here, but this is a good 15 minutes, and so I think I'm gonna pick it up and give another 15 minutes. That's a good little poppers, little lecture poppers.